Hello, this is Mr. Mitchell. You will need to open up the doc on Google Classroom that says Sick by Shel Silverstein. And you can follow along as I read the poem, and then we go through the notes and observations about the poem that you need to write down on the doc. So follow along as I read. Sick by Shel Silverstein. I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay. I have the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry, I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks, I've counted 16 chicken pox, and there's one more. That's 17. And don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut, my eyes are blue. It might be instamatic flu. I cough and sneeze and gasp and choke. I'm sure that my left leg is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wrenched, my ankles sprained, my appendix pains each time it rains. My nose is cold, my toes are numb. I have a sliver in my thumb. My neck is stiff, my voice is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is filling up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbow's bent, my spine ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk. I cannot hear. There's a hole inside my ear. I have a hangnail. And my heart is, what? What's that? What's that you say? You say today is Saturday? Goodbye. I'm going outside, or going out to play. So there's the poem. Let's go to the notes. Okay, under style, I want to point out that there are no stanzas in this poem. You can see that stanzas are kind of like paragraphs for poems. And you can see the one below here has stanza, break, then there's another stanza. This one is like the one over here where you do not have stanzas. So it is called a block style. You can see I have put the words in blue that you need to write in the notes. So if you need to pause to type any of these in, you can do that. So let's go on to literary devices, or continue with style. What we have here is rhyming couplets. Now, what I mean by rhyming couplets is that the end of the first line, the end of the second line rhyme. I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay. Today and McKay rhyme. And then the next two rhyme, mumps and bumps. Then the next two rhyme, dry and eye. The next two rhyme, rocks and pox. And that's what the rhyming scheme is. You have rhyming couplets. That's two lines that rhyme. So you have what's called an AABBCC pattern. If you had kept going with that, it would have been DDEEFF and so on. But you typically, when you say a pattern, you only go a little ways through it. And this is what's called a rhyme scheme. And you can see below that where we have what the today and McKay and mumps and bumps and so on. Now, every poem is not going to have the same rhyme scheme. In fact, we're going to have a lot of poems that have different rhyme schemes. And one thing you can be thinking of is it's what do you prefer? Now let's go to literary devices. A hyperbole is an obvious exaggeration. We've had some of these hyperboles before. But what I'm going to have you do is look in the poem. There are several obvious exaggerations in here. Things that she says is just not going to be true, but it's an obvious exaggeration to try to persuade the parents just how sick she is. And there's several of these. So you do have to write in the blank one of these hyperboles that's in there, but you have to look this one up. And the same thing is going to be true for a simile example. You may remember that simile is comparing using like or as. So I'm going to have you look up in the poem, sick, and find one of the similes that is in there. So make sure that you do that. If you need to pause the recording, you can. Also under literary devices, we have alliterations. Alliteration, we've also been over this, are starting words with the same consonant sound. For example, in the poem, they had hip hurts. So I'm going to have you find two other examples of alliterations that are in this poem. In fact, I think two others are very close to where hip hurts happens to be into the poem. H, It doesn't have to be H's, but it's going to be other consonant sounds that start with that. Okay, so there is some repetition in the poem, a whole lot of different literary devices here. The word blank started several consecutive sentences, so you will need to look back and see what word started several consecutive sentences, and that's a pretty obvious one once you start looking down through the poem. There are some things I'd like for you to note. In this poem, Shel Silverstein said there's the instamatic flu. There is no such thing as an instamatic flu. In fact, instamatic is a kind of something else, and I'd like for you to Google and find out what instamatic is a kind of. You're welcome to pause the video as you are Googling that. Number two, Silverstein uses improper language when I'm sure that my left leg is broke. It would be broken, and my spine ain't straight. You know, this is just trying to get into the way a child would say things, how little Peggy Ann McKay might say things. I'm sure he knows that ain't probably isn't the thing that you'd want to put in things that you publish, but that's part of it, of the style that little Peggy Ann McKay would write. So another thing to note is the rhyme scheme changes in the last three lines. You may remember it was something like, what was it? AABBCC. The last three lines are AAA. And the last three lines are what's that you blank. Today is blank. I'm going out to blank. And if you could fill in those, you can look those up. That won't be that hard. And you know, I think we can finally go to this one. Sonnets are known for changing rhyme schemes at the end of poems. So we had a change of rhyme scheme at the end of this poem. We had AABBCC, and the reason I'm putting sonnets in here is it's a term I'd like for you to know. Those are poems that are known for changing rhyme schemes at the end, and just like this one did, it went to AAA. So just for your notes, so you will know, and we'll read a couple of sonnets. A Shakespearean sonnet, for example, has 14 lines, and you can see the rhyme scheme with that. It's different. It's not AABB, it's ABAB, and so on. And that would be the rhyme scheme that you would have for that. Okay, so hopefully you have been able to take these notes, and you can submit those in Google Classroom and go to the next assignment.